I guess if you think about it, the sheer scale of the place, it's the geography, it is so vast. It is the second largest rainforest in the world after the Amazon. This vast, vast country. That's the only safety you've got when the bad guys are coming. You have a chance of hiding if you can just go and disperse yourself somewhere in that forest.
In the last decade, the eastern part of the Congo has been blighted with natural disasters, as well as massacre, rape and pillage. Malnutrition and disease have taken an even greater toll. As many as 5 million people have died. For the largest human death toll since the Second World War, there's been scant coverage. But analysis of some television channels, including the BBC, shows there have been more hours focusing on the threat to the Congo's great apes and their habitat than there has been on the plight of the human population.
I'd spent many months in eastern Congo covering first the genocide in Rwanda, then there was the flood of thousands of refugees into eastern Congo, then thousands more were dying of cholera in the refugee camps, and amongst the journalists there would be many who would be taking time out to write about the guerrillas in Virunga Park, which ran just near the refugee camps, and the emphasis would always be about, isn't it awful, there are all these Hutu génocidaires, these genocidal killers wandering around in the camps, and the guerrillas are being eaten, the guerrillas are being slaughtered, isn't it awful? And you sort of thought, well, yes, but there's been a genocide across the border, people are still dying of cholera, is this an appropriate emphasis?
Our Western response to the Congo does seem to allow for two contradictory visions to live side by side. However much we recoil from the human bloodshed and atrocities, we're still fascinated by the idea that these forests are also home to our closest genetic relatives. Ever since the first explorers, we have been entranced by the great diversity and abundance of plant and animal species, the sheer exuberance of nature. After Leopold, the Belgians attempted to bring order and infrastructure. But now, like Mobutu's palaces, the last vestiges of the white man's colonial endeavors are being swallowed up by rampant nature.
It was an amazing moment. Very close to the equator, about as close as it possibly could get. It was just near the town of Kisangani, what used to be Stanleyville, the city on the bend in the river. Deep equatorial forest. And I was walking through the forest, and then suddenly my heel felt something strange and angular. Felt a bit odd in this sort of leafy, organic world of the forest. And I scraped down through the leaf mulch with my heel and came across a railway sleeper, with the name Antwerp printed on it, 1913. But even more scary, the railway sleeper was connected to railway tracks, which again I could scrape away, and they disappeared off and then died in the forest. And Catherine Hepburn sat on that railway. Humphrey Bogart sat on that railway, and they went along that railway in 1951 to film The African Queen. And it was, for me, it was a very powerful moment, and it drilled home that sense of a place where the developmental graph had gone like a parabola and we were on the downward slope. And that's the reality of today's Congo.
But now there are new foreign builders in the Congo. Like the Europeans of the 19th century, the Chinese have come here, offering to bring the benefits of their expertise and technology. In a deal worth as much as $9 billion, the Chinese are promising to build new roads, railways, hospitals and schools. This is in exchange for millions of tons of the country's copper and nickel over the next 15 years. The new roads, railways and hospitals depend on a stable and open government, which will be able to maintain them. There are justified fears that history will repeat itself.
Economists talk about the resource curse, which is that assets which should be a great blessing, in fact, turn out to be a blight. And I think Congo is the perfect example of that. And what's interesting is that Congolese people will often talk to you with huge pride and sort of vaingloriousness about all these wonderful, we're a rich country, we've got all these mineral assets. And it really is a very important part of their self-image and their image of their own country. But of course, if you can't tap the assets, and if you can't tap the assets in a way that is then funneled back and reinvested in your own country, you'd actually be better off without them. And that is unfortunately the truth, because they have constantly seen these assets being used as an excuse to rape the country.
The people of the Congo are now among the poorest in the world. In the last century, many have left the forests for the towns and cities. In earlier days, they'd seen the forest as more than just a place of refuge and sustenance. It was also the place where their ancestors lived, a place of awe, reverence, and sometimes fear. Since the arrival of the Europeans, this relationship has been fundamentally transformed.
Comme si, depuis la création de l'État congolais, depuis Léopold II à aujourd'hui, les forêts, les animaux sont beaucoup plus importants qu'eux. Eux ne comptent pas. Je dirais autrement que les forêts ne sont que source de misère ou de malheur depuis l'avènement de l'État pour les populations qui habitent ces forêts. On leur fait transporter les ivoires, on leur fait transporter les caoutchoucs qui sortent de ces forêts. Ils subissent le poids. Eux n'existent pas.